One challenge I often see in the hiring process are delays in the interview process. And then what happens is your star candidates, the ones that you are excited about, that are high value, that look to be a potentially great fit for your opening, they fall out of the process. An actively interviewing candidate is now an actively looking candidate who's now evaluating other opportunities in addition to yours. Even if they weren't looking before they started interviewing, well, now they have some momentum built around their search, and now they are actively interviewing, most likely with other opportunities as well. And I've seen this happen a lot where a manager is finally ready to to set up the first interview, or maybe a second or third interview with a candidate 3 weeks later, a month later, and by this time, this candidate already has 2 other offers on the table, or maybe they've even accepted an offer. Once the interview process loses momentum and drags out, your high quality, high value star candidates are going to feel not engaged, so then they're going to disengage because they have their priorities straight, and that's the kind of candidate you want as well. So if they don't feel wanted and valued, they're going to shift their focus elsewhere. So it's very important to keep the interview process moving. When you have this start and stop, that also results in a lot of additional stress for you, hiring manager, because you are then, of course, not only balancing your leadership duties, but you're also now fulfilling the needs of this open territory or this open role. I'm going to share 3 tips that can help you keep the process moving. Here they are. Number 1, you want to start the interview process immediately. Now, what do I mean by that? Yes, while it would be ideal to have 6 or 8 solid resumes before you start the interview process so that you can compare and assess the pool out there, that is often not how it works. So when you get your first star or solid resume, that is when you want to start the process, because remember, that candidate, if they're interviewing for your opportunity, well, now they're excited and open and have some momentum going. They're also considering other opportunities, and you could potentially lose that candidate the more you drag your feet and wait on getting the process started. So trust that your recruiter will keep searching, will keep getting additional candidates to present to you, but when you get that first good resume that looks like a potential fit, that is when you want to start the interview process. So tip number 1 to keep the process moving is to start the process and start immediately. Okay, tip number 2, have your process and your team in place. So what I mean by that is, ideally you want to have your interview steps to the hiring process already established at the start of your search. And then you want to have your team in place that you are going to enlist help from in completing the different interview steps. So you're going to have weeks where you've got surprise meetings popping up, maybe you have a surprise travel, you've got a customer fire issue that you have to put out, you've got your leadership duties to balance. One way that you can keep the process moving without clearing your plate is to utilize your resources. So enlist help from some of the other managers on your leadership team and from some of the reps on your current team, the reps that you are managing. By having them participate in and conduct part of the steps in the interview process, this keeps the candidate actively engaged while taking away less time from your schedule. It also, in addition to providing multiple touch points for the candidate so that they can continue evaluating their interest in the opportunity while feeling valued and a vested interest from the company, you're also getting different sets of eyes on the candidate, and that's going to help assess your level of confidence in that candidate being the right hire. All right, so tip number 2 to keep the process moving is to have your process and your team in place. It's going to help you complete the steps of the interview process. And number 3, you want to improvise when necessary. Now, it is very important to have a solid interview process with multiple steps throughout the process. This can really help you make sure that you make the right hire with confidence. It can also help the candidate make sure that this is the right opportunity for them. But you do want to improvise when necessary, and that doesn't mean cutting out or skipping steps, but you could, for example, combine steps. So I've seen this before, and it resulted in a great hire. It resulted in a win for not only myself, but also the hiring manager. We were struggling for a long time to fill this opening. It was competitive market, and so this candidate had other opportunities, and the process was dragging out, and we were in danger of losing this candidate to another opportunity. So the hiring manager reached out, and we were having challenges getting the last few steps of the interview process set. And so what he did was improvise, and without necessarily skipping steps, he combined a couple of the steps by getting some different members of the leadership team together for a panel interview. So improvise when when necessary in order to keep up the pace and keep the process moving. Otherwise, you may find that that star candidate you're finally ready to interview, when the dust settles on your plate, they're already gone. And you don't want that to happen, because then you're starting the process over, and that's actually going to create more stress in your life while you balance your leadership duties and this opening that is not yet filled. So quick recap, you want to, of course, make sure that you keep the interview process moving in order to keep candidates engaged and moving toward the finish line, and this will help you get more qualified candidates toward the finish line and faster. So 3 ways that you can do that. Number 1, start the interview process, and start it as soon as you get your first good resume, all right? Step number 2, have your process, the interview steps, and your team who's going to help you complete those interview steps in place. That way you are completing the interview steps, completing the process, keeping the candidate engaged without stressing yourself out, taking too much time away from your leadership duties. And then number 3, improvise when necessary. Maybe that means moving some interview steps around depending on who is available to complete interviews. Maybe that means combining, getting some of maybe 2 or 3 leadership team members together to complete one interview step, or maybe a couple interview steps in one. So improvise when necessary. I hope that helped. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on my next video. And if you would like some help potentially in improving your organization's hiring process, reach out. I do offer consulting and hiring